Welcome everyone. For those of you who joined us last month, it's great to see you again, and all newcomers. We're excited. It's a pretty ambitious undertaking, but we think it's important to do. The only thing that matters is people participating. So our kudos go out to you. We begin this with a bit of a heavy heart. I would just like to share with everyone, Mildred Crump, President Crump, unfortunately can't be with us. Last Wednesday, she fractured her hip, and after surgery, she's resting, and it's a day-to-day thing. But she fully expects to be back for our next month's event. But it's with a little sadness that we'll continue to move forward. I would like to just take a quick moment to reintroduce you to Rabbi Capers Funeh, who is the leader of Beth Shalom B'nai Zachin Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation of Chicago, and Pastor Steffi Bartley, who's the pastor of New Hope Memorial Baptist Church in Elizabeth, the same church that his dad was the pastor at, and it was a seamless transition. And he's also the New Jersey coordinator for the National Action Network, and they are also our other co-founders of Diversity United. So it's great to have you back. And they've made a significant commitment to stay with the program throughout the whole year. So I hope you all do as well. So as I said, we wish Mildred Godspeed and full and speedy recovery. I'm curious. I'm not sure what everyone's response was after watching the 13th. I last spring when I watched it for the first time, I had a very visceral response, and to say that it was eye-opening, would be a huge understatement. Just the we'll get into it during the night's conversation, but just the fact that this so-called sacred document, the Constitution of the United States, has this brokered political loophole in it, that includes the criminalization clause, was just, many people may have known about it. It's incredible. I never even heard of such a thing, and there it is, staring us right in the face. So, it really shook me to the core, because it just underscores how difficult life is when you're up against those type of barriers. And certainly after viewing the movie, it becomes a lot clearer as to how the deck is so stacked against the African American community and people of color. So going into tonight, the question is, so what do we do about it? I'm very excited about tonight because part of our discussion will include a special guest. It's my honor to welcome Dr. Pamela Boykin Jones, better known more affectionately as Pastor Pam, who has spent a great deal of her career in the area of incarceration. And her company, her organization that she started, Communities in Cooperation, Inc., CIC, specializes in servicing the incarcerated, both pre and post release. So we've had the occasion to speak several times, and she'll be fascinating. So welcome Pastor Pam. Torah for Jewish people out there, Torah, but for people of other faiths, all religion, places such a significant emphasis on the idea of redemption. and how to help people toward it. Yet, our criminal justice system, after watching the 13th, as currently constituted, is almost purely punitive. And it places such an emphasis on punishment as opposed to being restorative in nature and redemptive. And that's one of the things that I'm sure the others will speak about. But that's something that's within our power to change. Reentry programs, et cetera. But I'll leave that to the experts. So Pastor Pam's vast experience in serving this population will shed a great deal of light on those challenges faced by prisoner reentry and the systemic effects of mass incarceration on the Black and people of color communities. Before I hand it off, I'd just like to give a shout out to Stephanie Nieves, who is part of President Crump's office, who's done a tremendous job getting this off the ground for us, and Jeff Havison, my personal friend, a member of Congregation Ahava Shalom, who's always there, and both of them have been sort of our unsung heroes in the background. So thank you all. It's now my great pleasure to hand it off to my co-founder, Pastor Steffi Bartley, who, as I mentioned earlier, is the New Jersey and Northeast coordinator for the National Action Network, on top of being a pastor. And by the way, I think I've said this before, but maybe last time, but his organization is in Newark, is providing meals, is feeding 1,500 people a day, 1,500 needy people a day. I think that speaks for itself as to the impact that him and Nan are making in Newark. So with that said, welcome everyone, enjoy, and Pastor Bartley, please take it away.
Well, good evening to you all, and to our leader, Eric. As always, such an honor to be a part of anything that you are coordinating. I know that this would not be in existence had not it been for such a great leader as yourself. And I just want to thank you for putting this together, the meeting of the minds, and really educating us all. So many don't know, and after watching that movie, the 13th, I think that it has really opened a lot of our eyes to things we just wasn't aware of, or sometimes just didn't take the time to even think about it as much as we're thinking about it now. I also, along with Eric, we are constantly praying for our leader, City Council President Mildred Crump, who is definitely my mother, and she has done an outstanding job throughout her years, and we're just praying her speedy recovery. And to Rabbi and to all of you who have joined us tonight, I'm so excited about tonight. Just so happens I'm over here in New York right now at the Sheraton Hotel. For those of you that do not know, the National Action Network, we are celebrating 30 years under the leadership of Reverend Al Sharpton. And so we have the largest civil rights convention in the country. And we are currently looking forward to tomorrow and the rest of the week. President Biden will be speaking. 13 cabinet members from his office will be speaking, along with Nancy Pelosi, along with Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker, and the list can go on and on and on. We're really excited about it. If you all care to watch it virtually, all you have to do is to go on the National Action Network website and just register. It's free. And you will really be inspired by all of the different speakers, the different panels that we put together, and to really want to welcome you into the National Action Network and all of the hard work that we do. You know, it's so sad as we turned the TV on the other day, and while we're in the midst of this trial, there were two incidents that occurred, one in Virginia and the other one about 10 miles from this trial, where a young man was pulled over just for an expired registration. And you know, those of you that live in New Jersey, how difficult it is to get an appointment at motor vehicle. And I don't know about you, but I've driven with an expired driver's license, expired registration, and because of that, it ends in tragedy. You know, I don't understand how one can mistake the taser from revolver, her police carrying weapon, to shoot someone and thinking that it was a taser. And you know that you see the protests that are going on right now. But what's also important, I think, that we be mindful that, of course, we want justice, you know, but I just don't want justice for the family and the victim. But I would want justice, of course, for the court system. But then I would want justice for the defendant as well. You know, when we talk about justice, I think it should be all around. These individuals who are allegedly being charged with these crimes, they need a sense of justice, you know, justice as far as the help that one might need, justice for their families, because not only does the victim family have to deal with this tragedy, but the person that's being accused, his family also is affected by this. And I think that we need to consider all parties, not just one. And so I just wanted to share that with you all as we're watching it unfold right before our very eyes. Tonight is really going to be a really interesting night to have one of my colleagues, Pastor Pam, who is the founder and the president of CIC. When she first started many years ago, I was a board member. And her former pastor, my bestest friend, he lives in Houston, Texas now, Pastor Anthony W. Wilcox. And I remember when she started it right in the basement of the church, and she just taken it to a whole nother level. And I really would like for you all to hear what she has to say as we're talking about the reentry, those who are incarcerated, those that are coming out. And she spends so much time in the women's prison. And you're really going to be blessed when you hear what she has to share with us. And so I'm going to decrease as she increase and introduce Pastor Pam, founding president of CIC.
Yeah, just a piece of itinerary. Sorry to
Sure.
interrupt. I just want to let the audience know. So our plan is to have about an hour discussion up to about 8 o'clock, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. You can use the chat for that at about 8 for a half hour. So please engage. Thanks.
Thank you. Pastor Pam.
Well, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Eric Friedman. Thank you, Pastor Bartley, for having me. And I want to give a special shout out to, of course, Council President Mildred Crump, who made the invitation. And I am so honored and privileged to be amongst you on tonight to have a conversation that is so important. And I want you to feel like you can engage. So if you have questions, you know, you can ask those questions. We want to make sure that you have a complete understanding, but a realistic perspective of what's really going on. And you've viewed the 13th, the documentary, which is perfect because that kind of gives you an understanding and helps me to segue into what is really important, what I'd like to make sure that everyone is of an understanding, that we go away from this with the same level of understanding through some experiences that I will share in addition to just information. So let's take a look at it. When you look at the documentary, The 13th, you see that it starts out with former President Barack Obama stating some facts, some really profound facts. He talks about 5%. America represents 5% of the world's population. However, America houses 25% of the prison population in the world. So the question becomes, how does that happen? And in looking at the 13th, it gives you a lot of information that is historical, because this cannot happen overnight. It builds from history. When I take a look at the George Floyd, who was killed with the statement, "I can't breathe," that is the epitome of what is going on in America and has gone on in America since slavery. It was an opportunity for him to be able to demonstrate in 2021 how the voice of someone who is a person of color is totally disregarded, while crowds gather and see the injustice and no one does anything to stop it. It's the fear. It's ingrained hatred. It's the belief that people of color are less than human. It's the treatment of people of color being treated less than human. Why didn't anybody stop it? Why were calls made to the precinct to report this officer, yet nothing was done? Why in the Capitol building? Let's talk about that. Why in the Capitol building was this opportunity for people to take over the Capitol building? And no police showed up? None were dispatched? When you think about it, for those of you who are in New Jersey, if you're on Highway 1 and 9 and there is an automobile accident, there are helicopters that are swarming, and there's information that's being given sometimes from a helicopter in the air to instruct people to make sure that safety is achieved. Roads are blocked. Things will happen to make safety occur in a matter of moments. But nothing occurred in that particular instance because the color of their skin was not Black. Had that been people of color, it would have been a bloodbath. People would have been arrested immediately. And so to understand how America still today, even though slavery has ceased, there's still an element of slavery that is taking place as it relates to the prison system. It's based on the economy. It's based on the economy of making certain that certain people have the opportunity in the industrial complex to be able to profit mightily off of the backs of those who are incarcerated, which is modern day slavery. It's that same economic situation that was in the South, that when slaves were freed, there was fear of the economy collapsing because of the need. Who was going to replace the slaves? And still today, who's going to replace an opportunity for there to be cheap labor, where people are able to be successful in America in a world that we're not even understanding? How people are treated once they're incarcerated. I want to give you a story of a young lady that I service. She went to court with her entire family, not thinking that she was going to be incarcerated. She thought she was going to pay for a fine of driving under the influence. And there was an accident that occurred. And she was not driving the vehicle. So she just clearly understood that she was just maybe going to have to pay a fine. But yet they charged her. There was a murder. The car accident resulted in someone dying. And she was charged with that incident. And they carted her off, and the descriptors of how she was described before her children by a judge in a courtroom. It was so inhumane. Her children were so surprised. They were crying. They didn't even take into account that her children were there because she wasn't being regarded as she should have been, a mother with children. They handcuffed her and they dragged her away from her family. And she spent 14 years just being released only about a year ago. And her story is typical, where she just made the plea because of the fact they made it a threat based on fear. The same intimidation tactics that have been used for years to have people to succumb to admitting or to taking the charges based on the fact that they don't have money to just represent themselves, and they think the plea will give them the best opportunity. With the war on drugs, we see historically that with the war on drugs, where presidents of the United States of America were imposing laws where people were receiving jail time that was far greater than the need. But yet, because of political reasons, the war on drugs and incarceration and this whole element of crime were being represented or presented to people to make them take a side and to talk about, yes, the rhetoric of crime prevention, but in essence, it just increased the numbers significantly. If I take a look at some things that I wrote down, and if you would just give me a second, the way we got to 25% of the world's population of incarceration, in the 80s, we had about 513,000 people incarcerated in America. In 1988, it was about 759,000. In 1990, it was 1,179,000. In 2000, it was 2 million, more than 2 million people. And it was because of the laws to accelerate, to not be tolerant. Addiction is medically related. It's not a crime. It's a health-related experience. It's people who are in communities where the socioeconomic level is so low that they anesthetize. They try to make themselves feel better because of the living conditions in areas where there are close quarters, plumbing doesn't work, they don't have the proper heat. All of the things that make it substandard living, believing that the people who are in those housing areas are substandard people. Things that you would never imagine happen in your community were happening to them. So they would sell drugs or they would take drugs to better their chances to be able to feed their families and to care for themselves in an appropriate way. Healthcare, not having access to equal healthcare, another means by which people are treated in ways, and it's disparate treatment because of the fact the people who have color of their skin, they're being treated less than, not believing that they deserve the same rights to the same level of healthcare. I want to give you a story. I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, and you can tell I am African American. When my daughter was born, I lived in New York with my husband, and I moved to New York from North Carolina. But my mother, she wanted me to have my first baby, not in New York City, not riding in a taxi cab trying to get to the delivery. She wanted me in North Carolina, where everything would be what she considered a little bit more sane. On my daughter's birth certificate, in order for me to have a private room and to have the level of doctor care that I deserved, they put me down, and I still have that birth certificate, as being white. I don't even know if you even understand that. When I look at my daughter's birth certificate, that's what I see. And I could not change it for fear that they would charge me a higher rate, something that I would not be able to afford because I was not appreciative of what they did for me to be able to have my child in the level of care that humans deserve. So with this prison industrial complex, the economic strategies, the benefits that America gets by being able to sell services and to sell goods that are manufactured by prisoners that are making less than minimum wage, far, far less than minimum wage, And then on top of that, having to pay for phone services that are quadrupled the phone service rates that would be on the outside. Where are they going to get the money for this? Women trying to get their personal monthly needs met and not having enough money to go to the commissary. Now they're already incarcerated. They're already doing the labor, but now they have to buy their sanitary articles and they have to make a decision whether or not it's worth it because they've got to get their medication for diabetes. So maybe they'll use toilet paper this month. These are the kinds of things that people experience on the inside. Once those doors slam, it's another world. How the guards mistreat the women in Edna Mahan. You've seen it. All of these are fear tactics to make people feel inferior so that they will never rise above those who are in control, those who have control of the economy. These are the treatments that are taking place within the facilities based on nothing other than a person not being recognized as being human. They treat them in the most inhumane ways. I go inside of, before the pandemic, I went inside of Edna Mahan at least twice a month. And I would meet with the women. We did services for them while they were on the inside. And then we followed up with them when they were placed on the outside to help them to be able to be restored with dignity. We don't have enough funding to do all of the things that we would like to do. Because I'm a Black woman, I'm female, and I'm Black. There's not a lot of consideration that is given to the funding that is in the state of New Jersey that is awarded. It all goes to certain organizations that have already been marked as the entities that will receive the dollars, although we do the greatest work with women coming out of prison. We are the only organization. Now we have Governor McGreevey, who now has an interest in women, but going back when it all began, we were the only organization going inside and working with women to rehabilitation. And we have the statistics that our operation, which is based on care and giving people an opportunity to have the dignity that they deserve, to make them have the hope and make them want to change and want to move forward with coaching and with guidance and with hand-holding and with connection to resources and making sure they have their driver's license and making sure that they have, their state IDs and making sure that they can get connected to their doctor, because upon release, they only get 15 days worth of medication. And then what doctor are they going to go to once they get out? If they're not directed, they're just released. We just saw a wide release of people due to the pandemic, which was a wonderful thing to release so many at one time, but without a plan to make sure that they had the level of services that were necessary. I remember Pastor Bartley talking about his experience of going to the train station, seeing people who were put on trains that landed in Newark. And as they got off the trains, they didn't know where they were, which way to turn. They were from different places, but they were given a train ticket to Newark. These are the kinds of experiences that are occurring today. Children whose mothers and fathers have been incarcerated. And women have different needs than men. When a man is released, well, let's talk about it from the inside first. When a man is incarcerated, when he's on the inside, when there's visitation day, there are long lines of people bringing their children to see their man. But when you go to the women's facility at Edna Mahan on visitation day, the numbers are very low. They're not bringing their children to see their mother in prison. So immediately, as being the matriarch of the family, always attending to the child with the best love that they could possibly render, now is alienated from their family and their child because of the stigmatization that takes place that a woman is incarcerated. Men are given more grace as it relates to rehabilitation. Women carry a stigma. Women can't find a place to live. Whereas a man can maybe find a nice young lady and they become, partners and they live together. Whereas a woman, what man can she get to partner with her to give her a space to lay her head? So many are homeless. And our services that we provide, we're helping them in these areas of need. And some are saying to us, you know what? Why don't I let me give you an example. New Year's Eve, I got a phone call. There was a lady who was released in November. She says, Pastor Pam, it's not working out. I've got my children. I'm in an apartment. I work, but I still don't have enough to make ends meet. And I don't have food. I needed my electricity. They charged me an exorbitant amount of money for security deposits. I paid enormous amounts for my apartment to have a security deposit, and I ran out of money. And you know what? I can't feed my kids. And Pastor Pam, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back in the streets. I'm going to steal something to eat, and I'm going to go back to prison because I can't manage. And I can't tell my children that I have nothing for them to eat over the holiday. And immediately we were able to call a local restaurant on New Year's Eve and deliver pizza and spaghetti dinners and ask her to put some of that in the refrigerator so that she could feed them until we could get her connected to social services to try to help expedite her need. And we encouraged her or discouraged her from crime. You wonder why people go back. Yes.
What is your headquarter address?
Our headquarters address is 9-11 Crawford Street, suite number 3. That's Newark, New Jersey, 07102.
Okay, so we could put that up in the chat. Pastor Pam, it's amazing the wealth of your knowledge and your extensive experience. I was hoping that our friend from the Midwest, the Chicago is sometimes considered the wild, wild West. I'm curious about his viewpoints on the subject of mass incarceration. Thank you, Pastor Pam.
Eric, I want to thank you, and absolutely our prayers are going up for President Trump. I'm praying that she makes a very speedy recovery. And to what Pastor Pam and to what Reverend Bartley spoke to, the issues are more systemic than that. They really go back, in my humble opinion, to a verse in the Bible, in the Torah. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 says, Vayira Elohim et Adam b'tzelmo b'tzelem Elohim bara oto zakar unikeva bara otam. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. In America, the Black community, the brown community, has never been considered as being created in the image of God. Our people came here as chattel, one step above cattle. When the Constitution was figured out, they had to count slaves so that they could get a greater representation in southern states in the House of Representatives. So therefore, you have the 3/5 rule that is also very much a part of the Constitution. Until America comes to the realization that there has to be, first and foremost, some type of an apology for the enslavement of people of African descent. There must be an apology for the treatment that was given to what we'll call Native Americans, who had everything taken from them and who had so many lies told to them by the government. Because when they would discover some precious material in the land that was designated for those Native American tribes, what happened when they found gold or when they found silver or some other material? Those things written on paper became mute, absolutely mute. This issue that the movie The 13th speaks to is systemic. And it is systemic, and it will continue to be systemic until America deals with the issue and the problem of race in this country. And we could have 40 Black presidents. That doesn't matter, because the treatment of when a person that is not of color is stopped by the police in Chicago, it is extremely different when a person of color, Black or brown, is stopped by the police. You can be running from the police and still you are shot. The policemen are chasing you. Their lives are not in danger, but yet in instances, and I like to bring this up just to really bring the point home. When this young man went into the church in South Carolina and sat in the service for over an hour and a half, and the people there gave him love, he coldly stood up and murdered 9 people. When he was caught, he wasn't thrown on the ground. He didn't have a knee on his neck. He wasn't Michael Gardner and said he couldn't breathe. He wasn't George Floyd and said he couldn't breathe. He wasn't Trayvon Martin, who was moving in a community. And Mr. Zimmerman said, oh, my life was threatened, but Mr. Zimmerman had the gun. Trayvon Martin didn't have a gun. When America sees Black and brown people as being created in the image of God and admit that slavery was wrong, admit that Jim Crow was wrong, admit that the conditions that Black folks have suffered under in this country for over 400 years. Sometimes it doesn't matter what your status is. If you got on the wrong clothes, I remember a young man that worked, a Black guy that worked, I think it was in the Clinton administration, had a jogging suit on and went jogging, and the police grabbed him. Why are you running? Well, he's jogging. We are not viewed in the same vein. Someone has put in the chat about mental health. In the state of Illinois, all of our mental health facilities were essentially closed down, dating back into the late 70s and into the early 80s. What replaced those mental health institutions were prisons. The state of Illinois built a prison a year for 13 years. Mass incarceration, feeding the prison industrial complex is what we have done. And through this program that, Eric, I'm so delighted that you have recruited the folks that you have recruited to be a part of it and to move forward, to try to move us forward, to try to move our country. And moving the country starts with moving each individual that is here with us this evening. That's the beginning. That's where we have to start. That is our starting point. So I am prayerful. I am very prayerful that as we move forward, we will examine deeper and go deeper into the rabbit hole of racism, because it is systemic in every element of this culture, of this society. And until we face that fact, the situation of the mass incarceration. So I have 40% of the prisoners today are Black men. They make up 6% of the entire population, but 40% of the prison population. The disparity when one was dealing with crack, is crack good? No. Is cocaine good? No. However, the sentencing that people were receiving who were dealing in crack far outweighed what people were being sent to jail for dealing in cocaine. We have to have in this country a period set aside for reconciliation. And until there is some effort to truly reconcile the wrongs done to Native Americans, to Latinos, when immigrants are treated like prisoners, detention centers are just another nice term for incarceration. We really need to think about it, and we need to move diligently to make whatever corrective steps that we can make as individuals. And I thank everyone that's on our call this evening. I deeply appreciate your being here, and Pastor Pam and Reverend Bartley, and to President Crump, and to Eric, I so deeply appreciate your initiative.
Well said, Rabbi. Well said. Well said. So, Eric, it's 8 o'clock. I know that we wanted to get to 8 and then move into, I guess, some dialogue. I was reading some of the questions. I just, you could only understand this to the fullest being Black, to endure some of the words that have been spoken. My 5th grade teacher, I'll never forget, she told me when I was in the 5th grade, I will never amount to anything because of my color. Every time I go on TV, every time I do something, I be hoping that she sees that I'm the one that she said would never amount to anything. I lived in Hillside coming up, Rabbi, back in the 70s, Hillside, New Jersey, place of predominantly white. in a lot of our families whose fathers, mothers were kind of well-to-do doctors, lawyers, pastors, and were able to move into Hillside. And they had a certain area that they would let us move into. But there was a railroad track that they shared with us that if you cross this railroad track, that you're subject to all sorts of things. There was a pool there, still there. Never swam in the pool because they didn't give membership to African Americans. And so when I became a father, one of the things that I did was whatever house I bought, Rabbi, I always made sure I had a swimming pool, that my children would never have to endure seeing a pool and not being able to go in it. And that's just a small part of some of the challenges that we faced. And as I read one of the questions and the comments, you know, yeah, we're talking about, but yes, I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to come up with a plan so that we can make an impact. We can make a difference. You know, the Bible says faith without works is dead. And so I'm just excited. I'm ready. My sleeves are rolled up so that I can come out and be a part of what we're doing here so that we could really make a difference, you know, in someone's life that made a mistake. One of the things that I oftentimes say is there are individuals today who have clean hands, very clean hands, but their hearts are dirty. And then these individuals that we're talking about today, yeah, they have some dirty hands. They've done a few things they're not proud of. They made mistakes. Difference between them and many of us, they got caught, we didn't. But their hearts are clean. You know, their hearts, you know, and you know, the scriptures say out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so I just want us to get this in our hearts so that we could speak and we could do something that would make an impact, that some young lady that's coming out of prison, a mother of 3, 4, 5, that she don't have to go through having to pick the phone up and call, but someone calls her and say, hey, we know you just come home. Here's the voucher that you need to go and get the food, the clothes, the birth certificate, the driver's license, everything you need. Here it is. And that's going to make an impact. That's going to help us change the lives of so many people.
I agree with you, Reverend Bartley, and also Rabbi Funya. It's amazing how it needs to be a system of care. And that's one of the things that's made us successful, is to have a system of care to connect people to whatever their needs are, and being able to make those referrals. That's how the program has been successful. But also, there is a need to make sure that where allocations are made to have people released or whatever the case may be, there needs to be funding associated to meet the needs to help it to be rehabilitative. And we need to take a look at the training at the institutions with law enforcement, and to make sure that there is an understanding of what is the difference between rehabilitative versus that which is punitive.
Wow. That's so true, because we spend so much money on locking them up. We spend so much money. So much money is put into locking them, keeping them. But you, Pastor Pam and I can't find any money to do the work that we do with our staff that volunteers. Majority of them are volunteers. And so we need that. We need it. And we need your help to help get it. Because legislation and the governor's office, they need to know, and they need to put the money where it needs to go. and that is to help us rehabilitate these individuals who are human. They're human. You cut one of us, red blood gonna come out. You cut one of them, it's all the same. But we're being treated like we're not the same, and we all. And we say one nation under God, one liberty, justice for all. I mean, I'm not a. I don't stand and pledge allegiance. That's to me is very hypocritical. I don't put my hand on my chest. You know, that's serious. I pledge. I'm allegiant to God. That's my allegiance, and to help the community that needs our help. And we need it. We really do need it. We really do need it. Eric.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, we're about, unless Pastor Pam has anything more to say, we could turn it over to a question and answers. And Jeffrey, are you out there?
Yes, I am. So anybody who has a question, put it in the chat and we will ask the panel.
One to my esteemed colleagues, Amy Schonhout, one of our congregants, has a very insightful thought about at the conclusion of the series. So maybe not tonight, but at some intermediate point, I would like the panelists to present us with an action list of suggested activities that we can do to help remediate the inequities. It is not enough to be informed. We must make our voices heard to try to affect change. That is something that we've all talked about. I don't know how to do that exactly. So maybe as we move forward, we could sort of keep that in the forefront of our minds. But it's a great point, Amy.
Very easy. Very easy. We could do have a sign up list as to what one profession is, how they would like to participate. Is there any electricians or plumbers or contractors or clothes owners, or grocery store, own something that can help, that if you could let us know, and then as we're planning in the future as to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, well, then we'll know how to best fit you and where you best could help us along. There are many of you, I'm sure, that former business owners, Wall Street executives, I'm sure we have all of that. Doctors, lawyers, that know how to get certain things done. Entrepreneurs, family business, what have you. If we knew, then we could really go after what needed to be going after as we set up phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, on and on and on and on.
We have Bonnie Rosenthal that has her hand up. She wants to speak. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself.
I am. Thank you very much. And thank you to the panel. Very much appreciated. To the person who just wrote about having Congress people, if I'm not mistaken, Cory Booker was one of the people who was in the movie, if I'm not mistaken. But my question is, I've been leading a Be the Change group since mid-June, and that's really when I opened up my eyes and heart to what was going on. When I watched TV last night, Rachel Maddow, they were showing what's going on in Minnesota. They were showing what's going on in Virginia. It almost feels like short of the fact, I mean, George Floyd has, a knee on his neck for over 9 minutes. But this gentleman who's 20 years old, it's like we're constantly repeating. It's like you have to question, like, okay, what did we learn in the past year? I don't know what we can do. How do we put an end to what we're seeing all the time?
I think, what you said, and I was watching Rachel last night. I watch her all the time. She really points out so much. She is the best. Like, she is the best. She is the Rachel Maddow show. She is the best. I wish Lawrence could give her a little more time. But I think one of the things that is so vitally important is when we're talking about the use of excessive force. As we watch the trial, I think it was the last expert, this gentleman that came on with the George Floyd trial, and he talked about the use of excessive force, what that really is. When you discharge your gun, when you do something that can end up killing or hurting someone, you have to always think of, because you are using excessive force. When we talk about the blue wall silence with these police officers who, knowing that these individuals are conducting this type of behavior, to call them out, to really, as far as the training, when you're going through the academy. I'm a part of the New Jersey State Troopers Academy. In fact, class is coming out in May, and they're going through the process. But I've been there, and I've watched the instructors yell and scream at these potential individuals who are trying to become law enforcement officers, and they take it. I watch them tell them to run 5 miles and jump over this, and they take it. And here we see how a Black person can say something, whether it not be in the right tone, an officer feels as though he or she should be getting, that leads to something more. When it shouldn't. There should be some type of training where they're able not to get upset or as angry as the person that they're conversating with, because they swore to serve and to protect. But here we're seeing that the first thing they think of is shooting. Shoot, and shoot to kill. This is not in the foot, in the leg. This is shot in areas where individual dies. And then, they get these attorneys that are only in for the money, that just makes the victim look like the defendant, and just talks about his life and the mistakes that he made. And he's dead. He's not even able to defend himself. And here we're hoping that we can defend him, and then some are being acquitted. And my prayer is that even with this George Floyd trial, if there is an acquittal, I just pray for a peaceful protest. I pray that whatever we do, it be peaceful. I want peace. Can we just have something peaceful? I mean, we're having this conversation. It's so peaceful. It's so uplifting. It's so educating. But we're not getting that from the people that should be displaying it. And I think that would be our biggest challenge.
I believe that what we need to do is to have a voice. The voice that speaks the loudest is the voice that we're hearing that is discriminatory, and these things are happening in the country, and it can't just be left as that's okay. Because I'm sure there are many more people who have a voice that are anti this type of behavior, anti this discriminatory type of treatment. And that was shown and demonstrated with George Floyd, when people came and they had a voice. And I don't think it's just with marching. I think that the agenda needs to be pushed politically. I think that letters need to be written to the editor. I think that letters need to be written to the legislature, the legislative body, the local, as well as at the state and the federal level, where people's voices are heard, because the politicians will tend to go with the agenda of the people based on the fact that they want to be elected, which was why the war on crime was so heightened with the political figures and the agendas. And we need to be smart enough to have a voice. Because just as you are not tolerant of this type behavior, there are many more like yourself. But because no one is making it publicly known that you have zero tolerance for this type of behavior, action, that's going to be a strong message. We need a strong message across America that there are some people who are not going to subscribe to this type of existence.
Yeah, we have a question here in the chat about existing job training and education programs. So currently in the state prison system, are there systems set up to prepare people to get back into the world? And for that matter, when they come out, do we have nonprofits that can help the people in transition?
Yes, that is a good question, and I can answer it in part. We have in the prisons, we encourage, when we go inside, we encourage the people on the inside to take advantage of every educational opportunity possible so that they can come out with some level of credential. There's the Cisco training that they're taking, flagging. We just had a person get a job because they know how to do the flagging and they're working with a construction company where the roads are being blocked. There are people who are learning how to do the dog training and many other areas. But we have to make sure that the people on the inside participate and engage themselves. But then when they come out, there are some community organizations, and of course that takes funding to be able to do that type of training and have job readiness. There's one thing I'd like to ask, that if there's anything that any of you can do, if you have a business or if you know friends that have businesses, that they become second chance friendly. That would be a terrific help. Second chance friendly, they need jobs, and they need more than those that are paying minimum wage. They need wages that will help to help them to accelerate in society, because things are very costly. The rents are very expensive. So that would be helpful from anyone who's on this panel, that I so appreciate that you have invited me to give you this view. Thank you. I'm enjoying the sharing. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
And also we have my nonprofit, which is Nan Nook Tech World, where we offer a free bridging this digital divide with the technology. We do virtual reality, cybersecurity, as Pastor Pam mentioned, the Cisco certified training, where after you go through this course, you can obtain a job making $50,000, $60,000, where we're working with companies. As you know, that technology is so greatly needed. We do all sorts of introducing you into the computers. You know, there's a lot of individuals coming out of prison, they have no idea of what getting on a Zoom call is all about. They won't even know how to go into that app. And so we're teaching them things like that. The 3D printing is outstanding. We're just partnered with Rutgers in the city of Newark to try to educate, try to make sure that when these individuals come out, that they're getting this type of support. And every class that we offer is free. And then we just partnered with recently with Lyft. We're working with Lyft right now with the former governor with the reentry program. And so we understand how they would give individuals these bus cards, bus tickets to get here to point A to point B. But the problem has been sometimes these individuals are trying to make it to the parole officer, probation, and they might miss the bus. They might oversleep. And so what we're doing now is we're giving out these free Lyft codes. So that all they have to do is just call a Lyft, put the access code in, and someone comes, pick you up, take you to your destination. And then when you're trying to get back, all you have to do is the same thing. Or if you're trying to take that mother that you come home and you have to take care of now. Try and get your children to childcare. And the weather is somewhat cold, somewhat so windy, somewhat just snow and everything. You really need to be able to get your child so that you can go to work. And to have one of these lift codes, it helps you drop the child off at daycare center. I also have a daycare center. And then you go to your place of employment. Sometimes you miss the bus. Sometimes the child becomes challenging getting them dressed to get them to the daycare. And then on top of that, you got to try to make it to your parole officer. And the first thing they want to do is violate you. Now here we go again. Here we go again.
At CIC, we do provide them with bus tickets. We have training programs that are basic training. They need soft skills. When they come from the inside out, they need to learn the appropriate level of communication. They need to understand why attendance is so important and just the matters of soft skills that are so essential. And in addition, we teach them interviewing skills. We get them, we have resume preparation. And then we have 3 employment centers where we have relationships with various employers and we're able to connect them to jobs. Right now, out of the women that were released in November, those who are looking for jobs, we have 70% of them right now are working, and they would not have been able to do that if they had not been given bus tickets, because how are they going to get to work? Sometimes they decline positions just for transportation issues. So we have that available to them. We would like to do more with a different level of skill training, but that requires funding, but we're able to at least get them jobs, and at least they get that first opportunity to get their foot in the door, to create a work history. And that's what we focus on, get your work history. And then of course, entrepreneur training. We do that as well, so that if they want to open up their own business, you'd be surprised at how they can do the screening of t-shirts, how they have online, we teach them Zoom because they have to participate via Zoom, but then to be able to do the shopping, setting up the businesses, pop-up shops online, and making money that way. They have some incredible skills.
And I know you're familiar with this, and here's one of my favorites. I love to teach them how to tie a tie. Coming up as a child, would watch my father, and I never learned how to tie a tie around my neck. I only know how to tie a tie in my hand. And to be able to teach some of these men who are coming out of prison, who've never had an opportunity to learn, if I'm going to go on a job interview, I having a problem, Pastor, I can't tie a tie. And us taking the time to just show them something so simple like that. The expression, the appreciation, that they now not only have a suit on, but they also just learned how to tie a tie and put it around their neck. So outstanding.
Well, someone from Illinois mentioned that local colleges are offering classes and training and flagging and other things. But when I said that the whole issue is one of systemic racism, in the city of Chicago, we had a school called Washburn Trade School. You could learn to be an electrician. You could learn to be a carpenter. You could learn how to operate heavy equipment, all trades. The more that the school opened up for people of color, particularly Black people, the trade unions pulled out of Washburn Trade School. So when I say it's systemic, I mean that. How many of these young people, if they had been given the opportunity to attend Washburn Trade School or other schools, it's so when the unions pull out, the opportunities leave. And so again, it's just not the young kid that's having a problem, the young man or the young woman that's having a problem. Why are they having these problems? Because there are absolutely lack of opportunities. Lack of opportunity to get into trades, to get a skill. And so if you can't get into a training program because the electricians union is not opening up to you, or other trade unions, then where do you go? What do you do? What options are you left with? So it is systemic. It is systemic, and it is still permeating itself in the city of Chicago.
Somebody brought up the state of New Jersey has just legalized marijuana. The Marijuana Commission had its first meeting. What is your opinion on how is this going to impact incarceration in New Jersey?
As you know, there were so many let out of prison because of them going in because of being arrested and convicted for the use of, for the sale of marijuana. I'm currently involved with 3 different organizations who are trying to apply for this marijuana licensing in the state of New Jersey. In fact, I think that here's an opportunity to give back in a big way and to provide jobs. That is another avenue for jobs for these individuals who are coming out. In fact, I'm working with a company called ZY Labs. It is a rabbi, and I think his company is in New York, and they're trying to do kosher marijuana. And they are really doing really well at it. I'm working with them and the first assistant, former Attorney General Levi Tan, and they're trying to start that in Hillside, New Jersey. And here's an opportunity to provide some jobs. They're also making it a lot more easier for people of color to apply for the license. And then I'm told, as I have a relationship with several judges, municipal court judges, superior court judges, that they've been told to the prosecutor's office and to the police officer, don't lock nobody up for no more marijuana. You know, don't arrest them for possession of marijuana. It has to be a certain amount. But for the nickel and dimers, I'm told that they're not even getting arrested today for the marijuana. Some are in some of these cities, townships. They disagree, but this marijuana is here, and a lot of our people have been put in prison for possession with an intent, and now you're legalizing it. And I just want to give kudos to the governor, because he has, and the Attorney General's office, they had released a whole number of these individuals that were in jail for possession of marijuana.
Can you speak to, in the 13th, there were so many poignant moments, obviously, and many things pretty unfathomable to try to wrap your arms around. But probably for me, the most heart-wrenching piece was Mr. Browder, Caliph Browder, the young black man who was arrested for a minor offense. He ended up going to jail for 3 years, I think it was. Finally released, no charges, and he hung himself 2 years later because of the mental anguish that was brought upon him by that experience. And growing up in the suburbs, we expected if somebody, I believe we had so many safety nets below us, that we didn't even realize possibly. But you expected your father or your mother, your friend's father, to go talk to who he has to go to, and whatever it was, pay a fine, and life goes on. The hard part, though, is, maybe to protect myself, you say, well, that doesn't happen. I mean, it's a horrible story, but it doesn't happen regularly. Do you have personal stories of circumstances like that? Because it's not something that I've experienced a lot of in my community.
The biggest issue in the state of Illinois and in the county of Cook, where Chicago is located, is that they have finally begun to address the issue of people being able to pay their bail. And so many folks are incarcerated in county jail because their families are not able to come up with the required bail for them to be released from prison. And so our current state's attorney is working, Kim Fox is working on legislation that will kind of like, I think they would maybe get out like on an I-bond or something, particularly for something very of some minor infraction of the law that the individual has carried out. And hopefully the police training will become more, it'll be deeper, and they'll be taught different methodologies in stopping people, and particularly people of color. I mean, I'm too old to get stopped now, but when I was in my 20s, in the 1960s, in the early 70s, busted tail light, you got stopped. It didn't matter. Going too slow sometimes, maybe even looking for an address in a different neighborhood, you were stopped. It didn't matter. It just really didn't matter. So I went to school in South Carolina as well as Chicago. And when I first went to South Carolina to go to school, this was in 1967. My aunt took me to the doctor's office for me to get a checkup to enroll in school. And unbeknownst to me, I got out the car and I'm walking into the doctor's office. And I didn't even notice the sign on the door in 1967 that said whites only.
Wow.
And when my aunt was running, because I'm from Chicago, young guy, and my aunt was running, and one of the nurses turned to me and said, ends go in the other door. What are you doing on this side of the building? So I was about to give her a couple of very tasty words, and my aunt grabbed me and said, no, you don't want to do that. So there was a instance of having to step back from this individual who was supposed to be a professional, who had no qualms about calling me a nigger and saying where I belonged or which door I was supposed to go into. That feeling is still prevalent in America. The N word is not used, but they have transferred the word criminalization. That's the new code word. All of it has to really be addressed.
And to share with the group, this with me is that, I'm very familiar with the system. I've been arrested. I did time in prison. I went to prison 1985 to 88, and wasn't even my drugs. I refused to tell on an individual. And I ended up in prison for 3 years. I was in the system. And when I was in prison, they had courses that I was taking. In fact, if you did not sign up for courses when you went before the parole board, they would make you stay longer until you came back, showing that you were trying to do something productive while you were there. And so I've experienced that. And then to come home, one of the things that I did when I first started preaching was I wanted to go into all of the areas where I sold drugs and tell people about what God did for me, how God changed my life. And so I started an outreach ministry. And I would go in all of the areas that I used to sell drugs and used to do things and would preach about how God gave me another chance. And I would share with them how important it is for you to know that I'm the same person that you knew that was out there, but God gave me another chance. And I did that for a good maybe 10 years. And all of my friends that I used to sell drugs with, there was a few who still continued to sell. They were murdered, or they were killed by stupid arguments and things of that nature. And they would call me to do the funeral. And I would have an opportunity to share with those that are listening. And I went by a name, Rabbi, when I had a street name, and the street name was called Boogie Night. And so that was my street name. And I would go and the mothers would be there and say, "That's Boogie Night." Now, I can't believe if he changed, anybody could change. And I would go out and share that. And then what I started to do was I went to the same court system, Union County juvenile. And I went and I asked, was the same judge there that sentenced me when I was a juvenile? Was the probation officer there? Yes. Was the DIFAS worker there? Yes. Was the prosecutor there? Yes. And I went there and sat down with the judge, and the judge was like, "I cannot believe this is you, Steffi. I'm going to have you come and speak to the children, to tell them about your story." And still today, as I still have a relationship with the court system, where the judges call me periodically and say, "Hey, Steffi, there's an individual that's in my court, and I think he needs to meet you. I think you could help him because you have a story to tell." And I love doing that, still do it today, because I know that you can change if you have the right people in place in your life that's offering you a better way. And so I love doing this. And all of the friends that I had back in the day that knew me, that was very close to me, that knew that if I had a scheme or if I was up to something, and say, "You know what? Hey, you take these drugs, you sell them. Just don't tell nobody that I gave them to you." None of them could say that I ever did that. And I've been doing this now for over 30 years. And I know that it works. I know that you can change. I know that if we have the right resources and the people around to help us, and it can work, it can happen, it can be done. These individuals can become very productive in society if they just had an opportunity.
I just want to say real quickly to answer the question as well. I'm very concerned about the stories that I get about the plea bargaining, whereas plea bargaining gives you a chance to, have a lesser offense, and it can work in your favor. When you have unconscionable pressure that's placed on you, that's a story that I too oftentimes hear. And with the caseload of the prosecutors and all that's going on, the public defenders that most people use, with the plea bargaining, it kind of gives them an opportunity to be able to take and process more cases without the undue investigation, and it impedes the reputation of fair hearings because it's used in manipulative ways. And then as well, we hear too many stories of innocent people that are then said to be guilty because they have received that undue pressure. And as a result, they just do a plea and say that they did a crime that they didn't commit based on the fact that they just want to get home or they just want to get out of the pressure situation. And it works on them and helps them to kind of become so dehumanized that they just want peace. Just leave me alone, just stop. And then, of course, with plea bargaining, it's argued sometimes as even being unconstitutional, because of the considerable weight that it plays in the justice system. And oftentimes, especially for people of color, it has the justice system suffer because of the misuse or the abuse that the parties have to be able to endure. And so that's how I want to answer the question. And in conclusion, plea bargaining needs to be looked into, especially in the state of New Jersey.
We have Ellen P. that has a question. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My mind is in many places. First of all, Rabbi, I'm not sure that you're too old. My son isn't exactly a young man, and he's biracial, and he has been my education in so many ways. But people who know me know I could tell my stories forever and share those experiences forever. But what I really wanted to address is I'm a little bit well. I wrote some notes, and I'll just go that way. I mean, first of all, whatever the rhetoric may be, as I've been hearing it for years and years and years, and a lot lately, the history of policing in this country has not been to serve and protect the population of the people, and any more than when in the U.S. sacred documents, it says all men are created equal. It wasn't intended for all people, and it definitely wasn't intended for people of color, and that was very explicit. That was the result. That wording was a result of compromise, intentionally leaving people of color and women, for that matter, then completely out of the picture. And I think that history is important to know. Police, the origin of police was as slave chasers, and that wasn't just to slaves, it was to people perceived as being enslaved people. And so that history is really important, because that really addresses what Rabbi was speaking about in terms of being part of the system. And frankly, I'm a little bit disappointed. I first saw the movie 13th when it first came out back in 2016, and things hadn't changed very much in so many ways from when I was a child, and those are other stories. But my understanding of the film was a much broader scope than policing, and we seem to be tonight just focused on issues of policing. And it seemed to me that the message of 13, which was so profound and important, is that there's a pattern in this country that's very prevalent, and that's that when the pressures are such that some concessions have to be given, they are. That's what the 13th Amendment was. The principle of the North wasn't, a great advocacy for freedom. There were other issues at stake. There were slaves in the North. Anti-slavery people, abolitionists, weren't advocating for equality of all people. There were so many issues stacked up, but it's a pattern of concessions like emancipation being given, like voting rights being given that are then taken away. The language has changed, but the situation hasn't.
Mm.
And I think while it's so important, certainly to help people as individuals and know the situation that people and individuals are on, it's not that it's easy, but it's too easy to address the issues that are on the surface and help people, which we all should certainly do. But I think that if we don't look beneath the surface and really look at why this situation perpetuates, and even looking at the George Floyd trial, not the Chauvin trial, the trial affecting George Floyd, I think it's fascinating to me that the officer in that particular case by the prosecution is being put on blast, but policing is being celebrated in terms of, and the system is being perpetrated. And I get so frustrated when people with such good hearts and good intentions and good purpose and working hard remain on the surface, because it's not going to change that way. This it's in the system that's the problem, and we really have to look at what's going on there, in my opinion. And I'd be interested in anybody's comments on those thoughts of mine.
I thought they were outstanding, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. That is the issue, the system. You're right. That system, our system needs to be changed. Our system needs to be changed. It really does. You know, you hit the nail right on the head. And it's going to take us, I believe, to help change it. It's going to take conversations like this, people like you, that know exactly what we need and will stand with us so that we can get our message across about changing the system.
Someone mentioned in the chat about inviting senators and Congress people into this whole equation. And I absolutely think that they do, because the change has to come from the political spectrum. It has to start there. And if it starts there, then prayerfully, I think that more politicians, particularly on the federal level, will see and understand. I was shocked to see Newt Gingrich in the movie and him speaking so bluntly after the fact. And so, but this is after the fact. Was that his position? Would he say those types of things that he said while he was the Speaker of the House? I think not. So it's about reaching out to those individuals in government, state government, local government, and the national government. And we need to approach it on a tier level, and doing things in the various states that we're in, and writing to, I'm a member of AIPAC, I'm a member of J Street, and listen, they know how to get a message. They know how to get a message out, and it with all due diligence. And I think that we need to incorporate some of those strategies, perhaps even in setting up a time where we could, the diversity through unity, can do a trip to Washington to visit our various representatives in various places. I think that that's going to be some of the types of actions that we're going to have to eventually get to really affect change.
So that's a great point. For those of you whose questions don't get addressed tonight just because of time, we actually have, we unveil our new email address, diversityunited@yahoo. So, send any thoughts and questions you have. We'll definitely disseminate them to our panelists, and stay with us. I'm not sure if everybody has read the press release, but the idea here, documentaries, discussions, I need that in order to get myself even close up to speed, in order to advocate for something or someone and become an ally. But the work, we're committing ourselves, I hope, to creating some type of platform, tangible, based on what we're garnering from this year-long program. So I'm not sure what it is, but help us craft it. And I mean, all we could do is really be in there in an authentic way, and let's see where it leads. To Pastor Pam, I told you how smooth you'd be. That was great. Thank you. You're muted, but this doesn't have to be the last time. We're very early stages of the program. Rabbi Fune, what can I say? As always, your steadfastness is something that I can lean on all the time, which is really meaningful. To our participants, we're open to ideas. We purposely left intentionally the last 8 months kind of open-ended. So, help us shape and craft what we do moving forward. But, please stay with us. So thank you all. Jeffrey and Stephanie, my kudos. LNP, great thoughts there at the end. Myrna, I saw your text. I couldn't respond for some reason, but thank you all. I think we have to all stay united.
Have a good night, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And I want to thank everyone for their time and for their input. It was absolutely very meaningful and very powerful.
Do we have a next meeting set up?
Yes.
And is there an assignment?
Yes. So that's great, because I almost forgot to talk about that. So the next time we convene is, Stephanie, what's the date? It's the third Tuesday of May.
Yes, it's the 18th of May. It's every third Tuesday of the month going forward for anybody who is interested in knowing the schedule.
So it's May 18th, and the documentary we'll be watching is called "The Truth About the Confederacy in the United States." It's unbelievable, by Jeffrey Robinson, who is the lead racial justice attorney for the ACLU. It talks about the Confederacy as martyrdom, and the monuments and the whole discussion around that. So please tune in, and I look forward to sharing May 18th with you all.
And we'll be sending out the link to the film within the next week.
Yeah, and that's just as a piece of I wrote I think the full title I wrote in there was "Hate Equals Heritage" or "Heritage Equals Hate." The truth about the Confederacy. Leave out the beginning. Just you go to YouTube and put in "The Truth About the Confederacy." It'll take you right to the movie. So, and I look forward to that discussion on the 18th of May.
Is the link for meetings always the same?
No.
Will it be? No. Okay.
No. So thanks, Ellen. That's another great question. I almost forgot. So once you're registered, you don't have to keep re-registering. but we will send out a new Zoom link each month. If that's okay with everyone.
And you'll get it within the week before the event.
As long as I can keep my week straight.
You're not alone in that challenge. So
Myrna, I know you had your hand up, so if you would be willing to send an email with your comments or your questions to diversityunited@yahoo.com.
Yahoo. I will.
And that way they'll be able to respond to you.
I will do that, and I will just tell you that I'm really impressed with the work. I'm impressed with the people here. I'm on another racial diversity program. I'm in a social justice film class, and you're just doing it right, and I'm really impressed. Glad to be here.
we know talent when we see it. So we picked the right panelists. But thank you, Myrna, because maybe we could converse. I'd be interested to hear the other programs you're doing. But
I would love to have a way to talk to you, because I met you at Ahava Shalom many years ago when I spoke there for the Racial Coalition.
yeah, you're still willing
And
to
you're
talk
still,
to me.
and you're still here doing your thing.
You're still willing to talk to me. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we absolutely let's plan on emailing one another. My email is just my name, Eric P. Friedman @gmail.
No, it's my name at Gmail also.
Yeah, great minds think alike, as
Yeah.
I'm fond of saying. But Rabbi Fune and Pastor Pam, I think Pastor Bartley never made it back. So Pastor Pam, please, when you talk to Pastor Bartley, tell him our kudos.
I surely will. I surely will. And anything that I could do to help this group to continue to forward the message, I would be more than happy to join in and help out in any way possible. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Pastor Pam. Thank you.
Nice.